Introduction. The most wanted man in the world. For nearly a decade, Osama bin Laden's name haunted America. The architect of 9/11, the face of Al-Qaeda, the man who changed the course of history on a September morning in 2001. He vanished into the mountains of Afghanistan, then disappeared entirely. The CIA, the military intelligence agencies worldwide, all searching, but finding nothing until 2011. This is the story of Operation Neptune's Spear, the mission that brought justice to America's doorstep. A story of secret intelligence, cutting-edge technology, and the most elite warriors the United States has ever produced. SEAL Team 6. Chapter 1. The hunt begins. The hunt for Osama bin Laden began on September 11, 2001, but by 2005 the trail had gone cold. The CIA's Alex station, dedicated solely to tracking bin Laden, was running out of leads. They knew he was alive. Propaganda videos proved that. But where? Pakistan? Afghanistan? Yemen? The breakthrough came not from a dramatic raid or intercepted communication, but from patient, methodical intelligence work. CIA analysts started focusing on bin Laden's courier network. In the age of satellites and drones, bin Laden avoided all electronic communication. No phones, no internet, no radios. He relied on trusted couriers to carry messages by hand. One name kept appearing in detainee interrogations: Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of 9/11, claimed under interrogation that al-Kuwaiti was retired, insignificant. That denial made the CIA more suspicious. Why lie about someone unimportant? For 4 years, the CIA tracked al-Kuwaiti. They monitored his family, his associates, anyone who might lead them to him. Then in August 2010, they got their break. Al-Kuwaiti made a phone call, just one, and the NSA intercepted it. Within weeks, they tracked him to Abbottabad, Pakistan, a military city about 35 miles north of Islamabad. What they found there changed everything. Chapter 2. The compound Abbottabad wasn't a remote cave or a mountain hideout. It was a city of 500,000 people, home to Pakistan's military academy, their version of West Point. And right in the middle of this military town sat an unusual compound. The compound was massive, 3 stories tall, with walls up to 18 feet high topped with barbed wire. There were no windows facing out, only inward. 2 security gates. The residents burned their trash instead of putting it out for collection. They had no phone lines, no internet connection. In a modern Pakistani city, this place was a digital black hole. The CIA began 24-hour surveillance. Satellites, drones, human intelligence, everything focused on this compound. They watched a tall figure pace the courtyard for exercise but never leave. The analysts nicknamed him the Pacer. His height matched bin Laden's. His routine matched what they knew of bin Laden's habits. Inside the compound lived 3 families: al-Kuwaiti and his family on the first floor, his brother's family, and a 3rd family on the top floor that never left. The Pacer was part of that 3rd family, but they couldn't be certain. The intelligence was circumstantial. They estimated 60–80% probability that bin Laden was there. For President Obama, that wasn't enough to risk American lives. They needed more intelligence. They needed a plan. Chapter 3. Planning the Impossible. In January 2011, President Obama assembled a small team: CIA Director Leon Panetta, Defense Secretary Robert Gates, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs Admiral Mike Mullen, and his counterterrorism advisor John Brennan. The mission was so classified that only a handful of people in the entire government knew about it. They had 3 options on the table. Option 1, bomb the compound. Send a B-2 stealth bomber with a 2,000-pound bomb. Quick, no American casualties. But it would destroy the evidence, and they'd never know for certain if they got bin Laden. Plus, the diplomatic fallout with Pakistan would be severe. Option 2, a joint raid with Pakistani forces. Share the intelligence, conduct a combined operation. But the CIA suspected elements within Pakistani intelligence might be protecting bin Laden. A leak could mean the target would disappear before they arrived. Option 3. A unilateral raid by American Special Forces. Drop in, confirm the target, conduct the raid, get out. High risk, but the only option that guaranteed confirmation. If bin Laden was there, they'd know. If he wasn't, the operation could be contained. Obama chose option 3. And there was only one unit qualified for this mission. Naval Special Warfare Development Group, known to the public as SEAL Team 6. SEAL Team 6 is the Navy's Tier 1 Special Operations Unit. They train for the missions other special forces can't handle: hostage rescues, counter-terrorism, reconnaissance in hostile territory. Every member is a veteran SEAL who underwent additional years of training and selection. They're the best of the best, and they practice for scenarios just like this. Admiral William McRaven, commander of Joint Special Operations Command, took charge of planning. McRaven was a SEAL himself, a legend in the special operations community. He'd planned and executed hundreds of raids in Iraq and Afghanistan. But this one was different. This one was in Pakistan, a sovereign nation, a nuclear power, an American ally that couldn't know what was happening. McRaven and his planners built a full-scale replica of the compound at a remote training facility in North Carolina. For weeks, the SEALs practiced the raid, over and over. They practiced with night vision goggles, with dogs with explosives. They practiced what to do if helicopters crashed, if they met resistance, if Pakistani military responded. Every scenario, every contingency, the SEALs didn't know who the target was. McRaven told them it was a high-value individual, someone important enough to risk everything. They'd learn the truth at the final briefing. Chapter 4. The Stealth Hawk. The plan required helicopters, but not just any helicopters. Flying into Pakistani airspace undetected meant using aircraft that didn't officially exist. Enter the stealth Black Hawks. For years, rumors circulated in the defense community about modified helicopters, Black Hawks equipped with stealth technology similar to the F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter. The Pentagon never confirmed their existence, but for Operation Neptune's Spear, they were essential. These weren't your standard Black Hawks. The modified helicopters featured angular, facetted surfaces to deflect radar, special rotor blades that reduced noise, radar-absorbent paint coating every surface. They were quieter, harder to detect, and designed for exactly this type of mission, penetrating hostile airspace without being noticed. The 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers, would fly them. The 160th is to helicopter pilots what SEAL Team 6 is to commandos, the absolute best. They specialize in low-altitude flying, nighttime operations, and getting special forces in and out of impossible situations. The mission profile was complex. 2 stealth Black Hawks would carry the assault team from Afghanistan across the Pakistani border, a 90-minute flight at low altitude to avoid radar. 2 conventional Chinook helicopters would wait at the border as backup, ready to respond if something went wrong. A fleet of fighters and drones would orbit overhead, ready to protect the assault force if Pakistani jets scrambled. The plan called for the helicopters to arrive at midnight local time. The assault team would fast rope down into the compound, clear the buildings, identify bin Laden, and extract within 30 minutes. Any longer, and Pakistani military could respond. The nearest military base was only a few miles away. It was dangerous, complicated, and exactly the type of mission that could turn into a disaster. But McRaven was confident. The SEALs were ready. Chapter 7 Crash landing at 1:30 local time, the helicopters reached the compound. The plan called for one helicopter to hover over the compound while SEALs fast roped down into the courtyard. The second helicopter would hover over the adjacent field, dropping more SEALs outside the walls to secure the perimeter. But as the first helicopter descended into the compound, something went wrong. The training facility in North Carolina had chain-link fences around the mock compound to allow air circulation. The real compound had solid 18-foot walls. The walls created a heat sink, trapping warm air inside. The helicopter, designed for optimal performance, suddenly found itself in conditions it hadn't trained for. The thin air, combined with the trapped heat, affected the helicopter's lift. The pilot felt the aircraft losing altitude faster than expected. He couldn't maintain the hover. The helicopter was going down. What happened next took less than 10 seconds, but demonstrated why the Night Stalkers are considered the best pilots in the world. As the helicopter descended rapidly, the pilot didn't panic. He couldn't pull up that might crash them into the compound walls or flip the aircraft. Instead, he guided the descent, bringing the tail down first onto the compound wall, controlling the crash. The helicopter's tail rotor struck the wall first. Then the tail section came to rest draped over the wall, while the nose remained inside the compound. The helicopter settled at a 45-degree angle. The pilot had managed to crash land without killing anyone aboard. Inside the helicopter, the SEALs felt the impact, felt the aircraft tilt, but their training took over. Even before the rotors stopped spinning, they were moving. Door gunners pushed open the doors. The assault team poured out, weapons ready, securing the immediate area. No one was injured. The helicopter was damaged, but the mission continued. In Washington, the Situation Room went silent. On the drone feed, they saw the helicopter inside the compound at an unnatural angle. Clinton later described feeling her heart sink, thinking about Black Hawk Down, about the Battle of Mogadishu, about American casualties. But McRaven, watching from Afghanistan, remained calm. He'd planned for this. The second helicopter adjusted course, landing in the field outside the compound as originally planned instead of hovering. The backup Chinooks received the call, "Launch now, you're needed." The crash changed everything. The plan called for simultaneous entry from multiple points. Now the SEALs inside had to improvise. But if there's one thing SEALs train for, it's adapting when plans fall apart. Chapter 8. Clearing the compound. The crash landing added noise and chaos to what was supposed to be a quiet infiltration. The element of surprise was compromised, but the mission continued. The SEALs organized quickly. One team secured the helicopter crash site, while Blue Team moved toward the guest house where Al-Kuwaiti and his family lived. Red Team prepared to breach the main house, the target building where intelligence suggested bin Laden resided. Blue Team reached the guest house first. As they approached, Al-Kuwaiti appeared in the doorway with an AK-47. The SEALs fired first, killing him instantly. Inside, they found his wife and moved to clear the rest of the structure. The guest house was secured within minutes. One enemy combatant down, civilians secured, but unharmed. Red Team reached the main house. The ground floor appeared empty initially. They moved methodically, clearing each room with practiced efficiency. On this floor, they found Al-Kuwaiti's brother and his wife. When the brother made a threatening move, the SEALs engaged, killing him. Now came the difficult part, the stairwell. Stairwells are among the most dangerous aspects of close-quarters combat. They're fatal funnels, narrow spaces where one defender can hold off multiple attackers. The SEALs had to go up 3 floors in an unfamiliar building, not knowing what waited above, in darkness broken only by their weapon-mounted lights and night vision. The assault team started up the stairs. Leading the way was the point man, responsible for being first through every door, first into every room. Behind him, the team moved in carefully choreographed formation, each SEAL covering a specific field of fire. Second floor, as they reached the landing, bin Laden's adult son Khalid appeared at the top of the next stairwell. The point man fired, killing him instantly. The SEALs paused, listening. Any sound of movement, any indication of ambush ahead. Third floor, this was it. Intelligence suggested this was where bin Laden lived with his wives and children. The door at the top of the stairs was open. The point man ascended the final steps, weapon ready, and saw a tall, bearded man peer around the doorframe, then duck back into the room. The SEAL followed, entering the room. It was a bedroom, dimly lit. Two women rushed toward him, screaming. The SEAL pushed them aside, not roughly, but firmly enough to get them out of the line of fire. The tall man moved behind them, backing toward the opposite wall. In less than 2 seconds, the SEAL made the identification. Height matched. Facial features matched the thousands of photographs he'd studied. This was Osama bin Laden. The SEAL fired twice, hitting bin Laden in the head and chest. Bin Laden collapsed. Other SEALs rushed into the room, securing the women, checking for weapons, ensuring the threat was eliminated. One SEAL radioed to McRaven, "For God and country, I pass Geronimo." Geronimo, EKIA. Geronimo was the mission code name for bin Laden. KIA meant enemy killed in action. In the Situation Room, Obama and his team heard Panetta relay the message. But EKIA wasn't the same as positive identification. They needed confirmation. The SEALs needed to be absolutely certain. Chapter 9. Positive identification. While part of the assault team secured the compound's perimeter and monitored for Pakistani military response, Red Team began the crucial task of identification and evidence collection. First, they photographed bin Laden's body from multiple angles. They measured his height, approximately 6'4", matching bin Laden's known height. But they needed more than that. They needed DNA confirmation. One SEAL collected blood samples and tissue samples for DNA testing. The CIA had DNA from bin Laden's relatives, collected over years of intelligence work. They could cross-reference and confirm identity, but that would take hours. For now, they needed operational certainty. One young SEAL, reportedly the youngest on the assault team, was chosen for an unusual task. He was close in height to bin Laden, and they used him for scale comparison with the body. They'd studied bin Laden's photographs for so long that they could estimate with reasonable confidence. The height matched. The facial features, despite the trauma from gunshots, were consistent. The age was right. Then they called in another person who'd been on the helicopter, a woman from the CIA who'd spent years studying bin Laden. She'd seen every photograph, analyzed every video, knew his face better than anyone alive. She looked at the body and made the assessment. It's him. But identification was only part of the mission. The SEALs had another crucial objective: intelligence collection. This compound potentially contained years of Al-Qaeda's communications, plans, contacts, and financial records. They needed everything. The assault team moved through the compound like a precision machine, collecting everything of potential intelligence value. Computer hard drives, thumb drives, documents, notebooks, DVDs, cell phones, everything went into bags. They found bin Laden's personal journal. They found computers with thousands of files. They found phone numbers and addresses. The intelligence haul would be enormous. At the same time, the SEALs were monitoring their timeline. They'd been on target for almost 20 minutes. The crash landing meant Pakistani authorities definitely knew something was happening. The nearest Pakistani military base was only a few miles away. They could arrive any minute. McRaven made the decision. They'd exceeded the planned timeline, but the intelligence collection was too important. Keep collecting, but be ready to extract immediately if Pakistani military approached. The SEALs worked faster. They couldn't take everything. There was too much. They prioritized electronics first, documents second, personal effects third. They moved through the rooms with surgical efficiency, grabbing anything that might contain actionable intelligence. Meanwhile, the SEALs had to deal with the crashed helicopter. They couldn't leave it intact. The stealth technology aboard couldn't fall into Pakistani or Chinese hands. Explosive charges were placed on the helicopter's classified components. When they extracted, they'd destroy it. Chapter 10. Escape and Evasion. At 38 minutes on target, the extraction began. The backup Chinooks had crossed from Afghanistan and were approaching the compound. The SEALs loaded bin Laden's body into a body bag, along with bags full of intelligence materials, hard drives, documents, everything they'd collected. The wounded, stealth Black Hawk was rigged to explode. The SEALs gathered the women and children from the compound. They wouldn't be left to die in the explosion, and moved them to a safe distance. The first Chinook landed in the field outside the compound. The SEALs loaded equipment, intelligence materials, and bin Laden's body. The second Chinook landed nearby, ready to take the rest of the assault team and extract if Pakistani military arrived. Pakistani police and military were responding, but slowly. The confusion worked in the Americans' favor. Some Pakistanis thought it was a Pakistani military operation. Others weren't sure what was happening. The stealth helicopters had been nearly silent until the crash, and the compound was in a residential area where gunfire might be mistaken for something else. As the last SEALs boarded the Chinooks, they triggered the explosives on the crashed helicopter. The blast destroyed the sensitive stealth technology, leaving only the tail section relatively intact. That tail section, with its unusual angles and modifications, would later provide the first confirmation to the world that American stealth helicopters existed. The Chinooks lifted off. The mission had taken 40 minutes from landing to extraction. The helicopters banked away from Abbottabad, heading toward the Afghan border. As they cleared Pakistani airspace, the pilots accelerated. Pakistani jets were scrambling, but too late. The Americans were gone. Inside the helicopter, the SEALs sat in relative silence. The adrenaline was fading. They had bin Laden's body. They had survived without casualties. The mission was a success, but they weren't safe yet. They still had to cross the border, land safely, and confirm what they already believed. The man they'd killed was truly Osama bin Laden. Chapter 11. Confirmation. The helicopters landed at Jalalabad Air Base in Afghanistan. The entire base went on lockdown. Only essential personnel knew what had happened. The assault team unloaded, exhausted but professional. They'd just completed one of the most significant special operations missions in American history. The body was taken to a secured hangar. Now came the detailed confirmation. Military forensic specialists went to work. They took DNA samples and sent them via secure channel to the CIA for comparison with bin Laden family DNA on file. They took fingerprints and photographs. They conducted facial recognition analysis. McRaven stood with the SEAL team commander, reviewing the mission. The helicopter crash was unfortunate, but everyone had survived. The intelligence haul exceeded expectations, and most importantly, they had the target. In Washington, it was late afternoon. The Situation Room remained occupied, everyone waiting for final confirmation. The operational report said bin Laden was dead, but Obama needed certainty before announcing anything to the American people. The DNA results would take several hours to process completely, but preliminary results came back quickly. The samples matched. Combined with the photographic evidence, the height measurements, and the facial recognition analysis, the certainty level reached 99%. It was Osama bin Laden. After 10 years, 7 months, and 20 days, the mastermind of 9/11 was dead. McRaven called Panetta. Panetta called the White House. Obama received the confirmation at approximately 3:50 p.m. Washington time. The president began preparing a statement to the nation. But first, there was one more task: disposition of the body. According to Islamic law, burial should occur within 24 hours of death. The United States wanted to respect religious traditions, but also couldn't create a shrine or memorial site for bin Laden supporters. The decision was made: burial at sea. Bin Laden's body would be washed and prepared according to Islamic tradition, then buried at sea from a U.S. Navy vessel. No grave site, no shrine, no place for extremists to rally around. The USS Carl Vinson, an aircraft carrier in the North Arabian Sea, was chosen. Bin Laden's body was flown from Afghanistan to the carrier. A Muslim military officer presided over the religious rites. Then, wrapped in a white shroud weighted with chains, the body was placed on a flat board and slipped into the sea. It was done. The mission was complete. Chapter 12. Telling the World at 11:35 p.m. Eastern Time on May 1st, 2011, President Obama interrupted regular television programming with an announcement from the White House. Americans across the country, still awake on a Sunday night, heard the news. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. In New York City, crowds gathered at Ground Zero, site of the fallen Twin Towers. People cheered, sang the national anthem, waved American flags. At the White House, crowds gathered outside the gates, chanting, "USA! USA!" The news spread globally within minutes. In Afghanistan, American troops celebrated. In Pakistan, the government scrambled to explain how bin Laden had been living in Abbottabad for years without their knowledge. Some Pakistani officials were furious about the violation of sovereignty. Others quietly relieved that the burden of bin Laden was lifted. The details of the mission remained classified. The public learned that Navy SEALs conducted the raid, that it was in Pakistan, that bin Laden resisted and was killed. But the specifics, the stealth helicopters, the crash landing, the 40-minute timeline, the members of SEAL Team 6 all remained secret. For the families of 9/11 victims, the news brought a mix of emotions. Relief, certainly. A sense of justice, but also the recognition that it didn't bring back their loved ones. The pain of 9/11 couldn't be erased by bin Laden's death. But there was at least the knowledge that the man responsible faced consequences. For the intelligence community and military personnel who'd spent a decade hunting bin Laden, the news brought validation. The thousands of analysts who'd sifted through evidence, the soldiers who'd fought in Afghanistan and Iraq, the interrogators, linguists, drone operators, and support staff. Their work had led to this moment. Chapter 13. The Intelligence Treasure. The death of Osama bin Laden didn't end the war on terrorism, but it changed it fundamentally. Al-Qaeda would continue, but never with the same mythic status. Bin Laden had been more than a terrorist leader. He was a symbol, a figurehead. His death shattered that image. The intelligence haul from the compound proved invaluable. The SEALs had collected approximately 10 terabytes of data: computer files, emails, documents, videos, phone numbers, financial records. It was the largest collection of senior terrorist materials ever obtained. The CIA and NSA spent months analyzing the data. They discovered al-Qaeda's communication networks, identified operatives, learned about plots in development. The intelligence led to follow-up operations, arrests, and disrupted terrorist plans. Some experts believe the intelligence prevented multiple terrorist attacks. The mission also revealed details about bin Laden's life in hiding. He'd lived in the Abbottabad compound for 5 years. He remained actively involved in al-Qaeda operations, communicating through couriers, writing directives, and maintaining leadership. He wasn't the isolated hermit some had imagined, but an active terrorist leader directing operations from his compound. Bin Laden's compound contained a massive collection of digital media and documents. The SEALs found that bin Laden was not just hiding, he was actively planning and communicating. His writings showed paranoia about surveillance, detailed instructions to his operatives, and ongoing strategic planning for al-Qaeda operations worldwide. One particularly interesting discovery was bin Laden's media consumption. He had satellite television feeds and recordings of news broadcasts about himself and al-Qaeda. He was obsessed with his own image and how he was portrayed in Western media. The propaganda war was as important to him as actual operations. The intelligence also revealed tensions within al-Qaeda. Bin Laden wrote letters criticizing some regional affiliates for killing too many Muslims, worried that civilian casualties were damaging al-Qaeda's reputation. He was strategic, thinking long-term about how to maintain support in the Muslim world while conducting terrorist operations. Perhaps most valuable was the information about courier networks and communication methods. Every phone number, every email address, every name mentioned in documents became a lead for intelligence agencies to pursue. The compound was a roadmap to Al-Qaeda's global structure. Chapter 14. Pakistan and the aftermath. Relations with Pakistan became severely strained after the raid. American officials questioned how bin Laden could live for years in a military city, just miles from Pakistan's military academy, without Pakistani knowledge. The compound was extraordinary. Massive walls, no communications, obviously designed to hide someone important. How could Pakistani intelligence miss it? Some suspected elements of Pakistani intelligence, specifically the Inter-Services Intelligence or ISI, had protected bin Laden. Pakistan denied this vehemently, but the suspicions remained. The United States had conducted the raid without informing Pakistan precisely because of these concerns. If there was a leak, bin Laden would disappear. The Pakistani government publicly condemned the raid as a violation of sovereignty. Behind closed doors, the situation was more complicated. Some Pakistani officials were relieved bin Laden was gone, eliminating a source of tension. Others were genuinely angry about the unilateral American action. The raid exposed deep distrust between two supposed allies. The United States provided billions in aid to Pakistan, considering them a crucial partner in the war on terror. Yet the US couldn't trust Pakistan with information about the most important counter-terrorism operation in history. For Pakistan, the raid was humiliating. It demonstrated that either they had harbored bin Laden or their intelligence services were incompetent enough to miss him living in a military city. Either explanation damaged Pakistan's credibility. In the years following the raid, US-Pakistan relations remained tense. Aid was sometimes suspended. Cooperation on counter-terrorism was limited. The trust necessary for true partnership had been broken, and it's never fully recovered. For the residents of Abbottabad, life changed dramatically. The compound became a site of international attention. Pakistani authorities eventually demolished the compound in 2012, trying to erase the embarrassing reminder of bin Laden's presence. But the memory remained. Chapter 15. The Warriors for SEAL Team. 6. The mission brought unwanted attention. Special Operations Forces operate in secrecy. Their effectiveness depends on anonymity. But the bin Laden raid was too significant to keep completely quiet. Details leaked. Books were written by participants. Movies were made. The public learned about SEAL Team 6's capabilities in unprecedented detail. This attention came with costs. In August 2011, just 3 months after the bin Laden raid, a helicopter carrying American Special Operations personnel was shot down in Afghanistan. 38 people died, including 17 Navy SEALs. While none of the casualties were from the bin Laden raid specifically, many were from SEAL Team 6. The incident reinforced why these units normally operate in secrecy. The SEALs who conducted the raid couldn't talk publicly about what they'd done. They couldn't celebrate openly. They returned to their units and continued their work, conducting other missions, training, and maintaining the highest standards of Special Operations Forces. But they knew what they'd accomplished. They'd completed the mission that America had sought for a decade. One SEAL, Matt Bissonnette, writing under the pseudonym Mark Owen, published a controversial book about the raid called No Easy Day in 2012. The book provided unprecedented detail about the operation and became a bestseller. However, it also created controversy within the special operations community about operational security and the tradition of silence. Robert O'Neill, another SEAL who participated in the raid, later publicly identified himself as the operator who shot bin Laden. His revelations sparked debate within the special operations community about taking individual credit for team missions. Many in the community believed the identity of the shooter should have remained secret. These controversies highlighted the tension between public interest in the historic mission and the special operations ethos of quiet professionalism. The SEALs had accomplished something extraordinary, but traditionally they didn't seek recognition. The Bin Laden raid forced them into the spotlight, whether they wanted it or not. For the Night Stalker pilots who flew the mission, particularly the pilot who skillfully crash-landed the stealth Black Hawk, recognition came more quietly. Their names remained classified, their skill demonstrated only in the fact that everyone survived what could have been a catastrophic crash. The combat dog, Cairo, became briefly famous after details about the raid emerged. Military working dogs play crucial roles in special operations, detecting explosives, locating hidden enemies, and sometimes engaging threats directly. Cairo represented the often overlooked contribution of these animals to elite military operations. Chapter 16. Technology and Tactics Operation. Neptune's spear showcased advanced military technology that the public had never seen before. The stealth Black Hawks, though one was destroyed, represented years of classified development. The tail section that survived the explosion revealed modifications that defense analysts worldwide tried to understand. The stealth modifications included angular surfaces designed to deflect radar, similar to the F-117 stealth fighter. Special materials absorbed radar waves. The rotor blades were modified to reduce noise and radar signature. Even the paint was specialized, containing radar-absorbing compounds. The helicopters also featured advanced avionics, allowing pilots to fly at extremely low altitudes in darkness using night vision and terrain-following systems. The navigation systems could follow pre-programmed routes with incredible precision, essential for avoiding populated areas and detection. The mission demonstrated the integration of intelligence gathering, special operations, and air power. Satellites provided surveillance. Drones monitored the compound and surrounding area during the raid. Stealth aircraft allowed insertion without detection. The SEALs provided precision combat capability. It was a perfect example of how modern warfare combines different capabilities into coordinated operations. The planning also showed the importance of realistic training. The SEALs practiced on a full-scale replica of the compound, learning the layout, practicing movements, and identifying potential problems. This training paid off when the helicopter crashed. The SEALs adapted immediately because they'd practiced contingencies. The raid also demonstrated the value of patience in intelligence work. It took 4 years to track Al-Kuwaiti, months of surveillance on the compound, weeks of planning, all for a 40-minute operation. Modern counter-terrorism often requires this balance. Years of patient intelligence work culminating in minutes of precision action. The mission validated decades of investment in special operations forces. Since the failed Iranian hostage rescue in 1980, the US military had transformed its special operations capabilities. Better training, better equipment, better coordination. Operation Neptune's spear showed how far those capabilities had evolved. Chapter 17. Strategic Impact. Bin Laden's death had immediate strategic impacts on the war on terror. Al-Qaeda leadership was thrown into disarray. Their founder, their symbol, their most effective leader was gone. Ayman al-Zawahiri took over as leader, but he lacked bin Laden's charisma and strategic vision. The raid demonstrated American reach and capability. The message to terrorist leaders worldwide was clear. There's nowhere to hide. The US can find you, can reach you, even in supposedly safe locations. This psychological impact was as important as the physical elimination of bin Laden. The operation also showed American resolve. 10 years after 9/11, the US was still hunting those responsible. The mission cost hundreds of millions of dollars when you factor in the years of intelligence work, surveillance, and planning. But America was willing to spend whatever it took to bring bin Laden to justice. However, the raid didn't end terrorism. Al-Qaeda continued operations, though diminished. Affiliate groups in Yemen, Somalia, and North Africa remained active. And a new threat was emerging: ISIS, the Islamic State, which would soon become an even more immediate danger than Al-Qaeda. Some analysts argue that killing bin Laden came too late. By 2011, Al-Qaeda was already declining. The Arab Spring was showing that change in the Middle East didn't require terrorism. Young Arabs were demanding democracy and reform through protests, not violence. Bin Laden's ideology was being challenged by a different vision. Still, the symbolic value remained enormous. Bin Laden represented terrorism's face to the world. His death provided closure for many Americans, particularly families of 9/11 victims. It showed that justice, even delayed, would eventually come. The intelligence gathered from the compound led to numerous follow-up operations. Terrorist operatives were identified and captured or killed. Plots were disrupted. Communications networks were compromised. The compound was a goldmine of information that continued paying dividends for years. Chapter 18: Lessons Learned. Operation Neptune. Spear taught valuable lessons about planning and executing high-risk operations. First, the importance of realistic training. The SEALs practiced on a replica compound, but they couldn't perfectly replicate the heat dynamics that caused the helicopter crash. Despite this, their training gave them the skills to adapt immediately. Second, the value of redundancy. The mission had backup helicopters, backup plans, backup forces ready to respond. When the primary plan failed, the helicopter crash, the mission continued because alternatives were ready. Third, the necessity of decisive leadership. President Obama made a difficult decision with incomplete information. Admiral McRaven planned meticulously but could adapt when circumstances changed. The SEAL point man made split-second decisions entering bin Laden's room. Leadership at every level was crucial. Fourth, the integration of capabilities. Intelligence agencies found bin Laden. Special operations forces conducted the raid. Aviation units provided transport. Each component was world-class, but the integration made the mission possible. Modern military operations require this level of coordination. Fifth, the importance of operational security. The mission remained secret until it was over. Only a handful of people in the government knew about it. This secrecy was essential. Any leak could have allowed bin Laden to escape. The mission also reinforced some painful truths. Even with the best planning, things go wrong. The helicopter crash could have been catastrophic. The mission succeeded partly through skill and partly through luck. The pilot's ability to control the crash landing saved lives and saved the mission. Another lesson: patience is essential in counter-terrorism. The intelligence community tracked al-Kuwaiti for 4 years before finding the compound. They then spent months confirming the target. Rushing would have risked missing bin Laden entirely. Good intelligence requires time. Chapter 19: The Human Element. Behind the technology and tactics were people who made the mission possible. The CIA analyst who first identified al-Kuwaiti as potentially important. The drone operators who flew surveillance missions for months. The linguists who translated intercepted communications. The planners who designed the replica compound. Everyone played a role. Consider the pressure on President Obama. He knew that failure would define his presidency. Another Desert One disaster, another Black Hawk down, and his political career would be over. But more importantly, American lives would be lost. He had to weigh the intelligence, which wasn't certain, against the risks. He made the call. Think about Admiral McRaven, responsible for planning the operation. He'd conducted hundreds of raids, but this one was different. If it failed, it wouldn't just cost lives, it could damage relations with Pakistan, embarrass the United States, and let bin Laden escape. The weight of that responsibility was enormous. Consider the SEAL point man first through the door on the 3rd floor. He knew he was entering a room where Osama bin Laden might be waiting. He could be walking into an ambush. But he went anyway because that was his job. That's what SEALs do. Think about the Night Stalker pilot who crashed. In seconds, he had to make decisions that would determine whether everyone aboard lived or died. He guided the aircraft down, controlling the crash, demonstrating why the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment is considered the best. Consider the CIA analyst who'd spent years studying bin Laden. She'd seen every photograph, every video, memorized his face. When they asked her to identify the body, knowing that her answer would determine whether the president announced success or failure, she had to be certain. She was. Think about the families of the assault team. They didn't know their loved ones were going on this mission. They couldn't be told. They lived with constant anxiety, never knowing when a knock on the door might bring terrible news. That's the sacrifice military families make. Chapter 20. Legacy and Memory. More than a decade after Operation Neptune's spear, its legacy remains complex. The mission succeeded brilliantly. Bin Laden was killed, the assault team returned safely, valuable intelligence was collected. It stands as one of the most successful special operations missions in military history. But the war on terror didn't end. New threats emerged. ISIS rose and eventually fell. Taliban returned to power in Afghanistan in 2021. Terrorist groups continue operating worldwide. Killing bin Laden was a significant victory, but not a final one. The mission demonstrated American military capability in a way that reassured allies and deterred enemies. It showed that the United States could conduct precision operations anywhere in the world when necessary. This capability remains a cornerstone of American power projection. For the special operations community, Neptune's spear validated decades of training and preparation. The mission showcased what elite forces could accomplish when properly supported with intelligence and technology. It reinforced the value of these units and their unique capabilities. The raid also created complications. The public attention on SEAL Team 6 was unwelcome in a community that values secrecy. Books and movies about the raid revealed tactics and techniques. Some in the special operations community worried that operational security had been compromised for public relations. For Pakistan, the legacy is embarrassment and suspicion. Questions remain about how bin Laden lived undetected in Abbottabad. The raid damaged US-Pakistan relations in ways that still affect cooperation today. For Americans, particularly those who lost loved ones on 9/11, the mission provided a measure of closure. Justice wasn't immediate, but it came. The man who orchestrated the worst terrorist attack in American history was held accountable. The mission also showed the cost of that justice. 10 years of war, thousands of American lives, trillions of dollars spent. Was killing bin Laden worth all that? Reasonable people disagree. But on May 2, 2011, when Americans learned that bin Laden was dead, the answer seemed clear. Conclusion: 40 minutes that changed history. Operation Neptune's spear lasted 40 minutes from landing to extraction. But those 40 minutes represented 10 years of searching, millions of hours of intelligence work, billions of dollars invested in special operations capabilities, and decades of military evolution since the failed Iranian hostage rescue. The mission succeeded because of people, intelligence analysts, special operators, pilots, planners, and leaders who did their jobs with exceptional skill. It succeeded because of technology, stealth aircraft, surveillance systems, precision weapons. It succeeded because of preparation, realistic training, detailed planning, and thinking through contingencies. It also succeeded because of luck. The helicopter that crashed could have killed everyone aboard. Pakistani military could have responded faster. Bin Laden could have been somewhere else in the compound. The intelligence could have been wrong. Many things could have gone catastrophically wrong, but didn't. The SEALs who conducted the raid returned to their units and continued their work. They couldn't celebrate publicly. They couldn't tell their families what they'd done. They lived with the knowledge that they'd participated in one of the most significant operations in American military history, but they had to remain silent. Admiral McRaven moved on to other commands, eventually becoming head of all U.S. Special Operations Command. The intelligence analysts who found bin Laden went back to tracking other threats. The Night Stalker pilots flew other missions. The CIA continued its work. Everyone moved forward. But that night in Abbottabad changed history. It brought justice for 9/11. It demonstrated American capabilities. It validated years of sacrifice and effort. And it proved that even when the hunt seems hopeless, when the trail is cold and the target seems impossible to find, patience and persistence can prevail. Osama bin Laden believed he could hide forever, that America would eventually give up, that he was beyond reach. He was wrong. On May 2, 2011, American Special Operations Forces proved that there's nowhere beyond reach, no one beyond justice. That's the legacy of Operation Neptune Spear. Not just that it succeeded, but what it proved was possible. With the right people, the right preparation, and the right commitment, even the most difficult missions can be accomplished for God and country. Geronimo Ikia, mission complete.